Tomorrow, when I go to the gym, I can guarantee you the place will be packed. There'll be a waiting line from the door to the desk to check in to go work out, and there'll be waiting lines for certain equipment. But it doesn't bother me too much because I know that come February 5th, I will have the gym to myself once again for the next 11 months. So it doesn't bother me. I can handle the busy month of January. As I look over the last decade, I'm amazed, absolutely amazed at what has happened in the world around me, culturally, politically, governmentally, morally, spiritually. As I look into the lives of my family, as I look into the lives of my friends, as I view your lives, I'm just amazed at what God has done. It is amazing, absolutely amazing in the last 10 years. I'm particularly surprised that the church hasn't been raptured yet. As I stop and look at what all that has happened, and it wouldn't surprise me that we get raptured real soon. I'm also surprised at how much my children have grown. Over this last week, I took the week off just to get things caught up around the home place, things that I've been ignoring for years. And I was out on Tuesday cutting down some old dead trees around the pond, and then branches that every time a windstorm comes through, which is frequently here in Texas, you get these branches that are down or halfway down, and you've got to go out and cut them. We call them widow makers out in Oregon. So I'm piling up a big bond pile for my annual bonfire on Tuesday, and I'm down there. It's a cold, drizzly day, you might remember. And I walk over to the old tree fort that Robert and Liza used to play in. And as I was going through some debris to decide what to throw away and what to keep, I ran across some old wooden things they had made from nails and hammers. And they always would hang out there at the tree fort with the Beaver Lake gang, all the kids that they've grown up with. And I noticed that one of the objects was an old pulpit, and I was just mused by that. So I think when I repair the tree fort, I'll put that pulpit in there for the next generation of kids, or maybe when your little ones come over to play, they can use it. But to me, it seems like only yesterday that they were kids playing there in the woods, adventuring and having a good time. And as teenagers, they still adventure daily. It's with a different focus, of course, as they drive and go here and go there. And now I sound more like my parents, don't I? Using phrases like, it seems like only yesterday. Then I realize what a gift time is. Time is a gift for all of us, and especially for those who are followers of Christ, those who look at Him, those who seek Him, those who wait for His second coming, His soon coming return. So that's kind of why I put this together this morning as I was contemplating this. Genesis 1:14 says, "Then God said, 'Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for the signs and the seasons and for the days and for the years.'" Now, it's fascinating. If you know your science, you'll know that if you were to go to Mars, that the seasons are going to be slightly different there than they are here. Months and years and weeks and even days, because of the distance Mars is from the sun and the rotation and all the things that create time. So that really causes us to realize that time is important for us to consider. It didn't come by random chance. Time was a deliberate, created entity, if you would, by our God, according to Genesis' account of creation. Time is a created thing, and I believe it indeed is a gift, if you look at it, if you focus upon it. We cannot make anything more of time than that. Elizabeth Elliot says about time, "We can only receive it and be faithful stewards in the use of it." Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." The idea that I don't have enough time is more often an excuse than it is the truth. Now, I know I'm the biggest violator of that, so I beg your pardon now. For all of us, if we are honest with ourselves and with God, can make time for the things that are really important, for the things that are for the purpose, for the season of now. I think the real challenge is to take frequent assessments, often enough, to determine what is my priority now. If you stop and make an assessment of your life, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, hopefully you will this morning as you're thinking about these things, that you realize that, wow, maybe a lot of the stuff I do and I think is important doesn't really necessarily need to be done, and that I could focus and reassess on the things that really do need to be done. So I think the real challenge for us will be to do that, to know and to understand what God is calling us to do today, to know the season and to know the purpose. And what an appropriate thing to think of as we enter the year 2011. Now turn to Philippians 3:13, and hold your finger there. I often hear people tell me how much time that they now have since they let the monthly contract go on their cable TV, for instance. You hear that over and over and over. That's just one example of something that eats up our time. Not that it's all bad, but how often do we sit around and watch cable TV and hours have gone by thinking, man, I just don't have enough time. There's not enough hours in the day to get things done. We've all done that. Most of us really have more time than we think. When I was 30-ish, something, early 30s, I went to Biola University, working full-time, in ministry full-time. I was a director of the missions department in our church, and we'd take teams to Guatemala and go to Africa and Mexico. And I was a full-time student at Biola University. People would ask me, how do you do it? And I said, I don't really know, except that there's grace to do it. But we cut TV out of our life, and unbelievable. I had all this time to study. When the kids would go to bed, because our kids were little. And that's not an easy time. If you got little kids, you know that is not an easy time. But I just started regimenting my time, and I had more time than I ever dreamed I had, and was able to do it. And I'm not saying it was just like a super easy thing. Of course it wasn't, but you get the picture. We do have more time than we think. The Apostle Paul had a unique and proper perspective of time. He says in Philippians 3:13, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press toward the goal of the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Now, I personally learn from the past, and I take forward with me the wonderful things from my childhood. Not everything was wonderful, but I take and glean the wonderful things from my childhood and from my early years of being a Christian. I became saved when I was 20. However, it would be a waste of my precious gift of time that God has given me if I were to live in the past, if I were to long for the so-called good old days, if you would. And why is this true? Because God has too many new things that He wants to do and accomplish in my life, in His kingdom. And that's kind of what Paul is focusing on here. There are new seasons, there are new purposes in my life. Each and every day, each and every week, each and every month, each and every year, each and every decade. My job is to recognize them, discern the seasons and the purposes of my life, and to follow God. Paul said that he was forgetting the past and he was reaching forward to the future. It clutters and complicates things when we try to move forward while we are still looking back at the past, mulling it over, regretting about it, obsessing about it, regretting about it. We've all made mistakes in life, mistakes that we regret. Let's be honest, be truthful about it. But have you ever noticed that God doesn't allow you to travel back through a wormhole back into time and to clear up the messes you made? Do you notice that? Every now and then I find myself, man, if I could do it over, I'd do it this way. Well, that's a stupid thought, because God doesn't give me that opportunity. No, I read something on Fox News the other day that scientists think that they maybe have discovered that some of Einstein's theories are indeed true, that maybe you could travel through some kind of a wormhole. But until that day happens, I can't go back and change my past. And if I did, I'd just mess it up even worse than I did the first time around. So why bother, right? So I guess that means that I'm to ask for forgiveness for the past. I'm to forgive myself. I'm to forgive others for the past. And then I'm to move forward, as Paul says. I'm to live for the here and the now, looking forward to that which is to come. And that's a healthy way to do it. As Paul talked about pressing toward the goal of the prize, he no doubt was considering how runners in distance races hold a certain amount of energy back for the final lap or for the final mile or whatever it is, so that they can indeed cross that finish line. So they pace themselves so that they can finish that which they started. Although there are many aspects of training that make a runner successful, I know I used to run the half-mile race. I've shared that before, or the 880, as we used to refer to it. And it's a very arduous, really insidious run as far as I'm concerned, because basically it's a very moderate but steady sprint. Maybe not as fast as you would do a 100-yard dash, but indeed it's a constant sprint for 2 times around that lap for a half a mile. Very hateful run, but I used to do it. There are 2 key elements that are important focuses for a runner to be able to use his time and energy well to simplify his or her focus to complete that race and to cross the finish line. First, runners need to have a successful beginning or a successful start. And if you've ever started in those starting blocks way back in the day when I do it, you'd have these long cleats because we were running most often in dirt tracks. And these cleats would stick down into the dirt and you'd just take off. And the start was critically important. To start out fast enough, strong enough, but not so fast, not so overbearing that you couldn't finish the race. Secondly, runners need to know where they're going so that they can pace themselves and use their time well and stay focused. So if I don't know if I'm running a 100-yard dash or an 880 or a mile or a 2-mile run, how am I going to know how to pace myself? How am I going to know how to focus? Is it one time around the field? Is it twice? Is it an 80-mile marathon, 5K? What is it? Turn to Galatians 3:1 and hold your finger there. Equating Paul's analogy of running to our spiritual walk and the gift of time that God has given us, I want to focus on the importance of starting and continuing in the Spirit as it relates to our Christian walk. Then I want to share with you the vision of this church. I think that's important to do this morning, Calvary Chapel, Honey Creek, so that we can pace ourselves in our walk with God. As believers, how do we begin? How does it all begin as a believer? According to the Apostle Paul, we begin in the Spirit. Our life as Christians, that is being born again, is a work of the Spirit. It's not a work of the flesh. It's not the good works that we do. You didn't get saved because you're such a wonderful person. Quite to the contrary, right? All of us. By the Holy Spirit, we're saved, filled with His Spirit, live by the Spirit day and day. Galatians 3, verses 1 through 5, Paul declares quite strongly, quite adamantly, quite forcefully in your face. He says, "O foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you that you should not obey the truth? Before whose eyes Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed among you as crucified. This only I want to learn from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law, or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish? Having begun in the Spirit, are you now being made perfect by the flesh? Have you suffered so many things in vain? If indeed it was in vain? Therefore, he who supplies the Spirit to you and works miracles among you, does he do it by the works of the law or by the hearing of faith?" Very key message. We could camp on this for 6 months. Powerful, powerful words to meditate upon, to consider, to think upon. He who supplies the Spirit, he who has worked miracles in your life. Now, pause a moment. Look back to the point you became a Christian or became cognitive of your Christian walk with God. And think about all the miracles. I know sometimes we lose sight of it, don't we? Because life becomes seemingly so ordinary, so mundane. And yet, if you are honest with yourself, maybe you journal things, you'll think, my gosh, God did this here, and He did this here in 1999, and this in 2006, and this yesterday. Oh, my word. Now, was that by the works of the flesh? Was that by all your great cleverness and your great education and most wonderfulness? I think not. I believe it was by the Spirit. Wouldn't you agree? It was by His Spirit. So one of the greatest dangers to the race that we run as Christians in making good use of the gift of time that is God given us is burning out through legalism, through works of the flesh, through trying to do it in your own strength, versus staying in the Spirit.